Hi everyone, welcome to week 2 of English 1020. This will be the first of 2 videos this week. Hopefully by this point you've had a chance to go through all the material from last week, familiarize yourself with the course, look through all of the major assignments, everything that will be expected of you, order your textbook. So hopefully by now you feel more comfortable in the course and we can get right into the material to help us work towards working on project 1, okay? All right, so what we're going to do in this video, I'm going to go through some weekly reminders. I'll do this every week. I'll go through the due dates for the week so that you can make sure that we're on the same page with what's due. We will then talk about annotation very briefly in preparation for one of the assignments that's due this week. And then finally, we will spend the bulk of the video looking at rhetorical appeals and devices. Okay? All right. So don't forget that at some point before July 17th, you need to meet with me at least once. This is worth 50 points, so it's kind of a big deal to make sure that you do this. My office hours are Tuesday from 10 to 11 a.m. They will be on the conferences tab on Canvas. If that time doesn't work for you, that's completely fine. I am also super available by appointment. Send me an email, give me some times that might work for you, and then I will respond with what works for me and we can set something up from there, okay? So what is due this week? You have something due on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, so hopefully that's nice and spaced out for you. On Wednesday, you will need to turn in your Project 1 annotation, and we will talk a little bit more about what that looks like in just a moment. On Friday, you will do your reading response 2, just like last week. And then on Sunday, you have your second discussion board or weekly journal, okay? So what your schedule looks like for this week, or what I would suggest your schedule looks like this week, this is also posted on Canvas for you. By Wednesday, you should read chapter 9 of your textbook. If for some reason you have not yet received your textbook by Wednesday, though you have ordered it, please send me an email so that I can figure out what's going on or try to get you the text in some other way. But hopefully, if you ordered it last week by Wednesday, hopefully it should be here by Wednesday, okay? But read chapter 9. Read the argument types handout, which is available under the module 2, or I'm sorry, the week 2 module on Canvas. And then you want to, if you didn't get a chance to read the, or look at the articles that I posted last week, look through those articles and select which one you will be using for Project 1. So for Project 1, as a refresher, you're going to be analyzing that article. So select one of the 10 that you are interested in, or that you think you might have a lot to analyze or say about the article, okay? You should then watch this video. And then you will have due on Wednesday by midnight, you will have the annotations for Project 1 article, okay? Again, I'll show you an example of what that looks like in a moment. By Friday, you should watch the second video, you should turn in your reading response, and you should also probably begin the work of drafting your first project, okay? So your first project is going to be due next week, but it's a good idea to get started on that. As you continue to watch the videos, you should understand more of the terms that the assignment and the rubric are asking of you. So you should be able to begin the process of identifying some of the things that we talk about for Project 1, okay? And then by Sunday, you should read chapter 6 of the textbook, and you should do the second discussion board, okay? Any questions, just let me know. Hopefully it's fairly straightforward, and hopefully you're all familiar with how things are working on Canvas by now, but let me know if something is unclear, okay? All right, so what is annotation? Annotation is the act of marking up, commenting, questioning a text, a diagram, really anything. You could even do it to a video if you had kind of the timestamps with the photo from the time. Annotation looks like annotation looks like this on the left. You've all probably done this, even if you weren't aware that you were annotating something. You've all probably marked in things that you've read even if it's just with question marks, or underline something that's interesting that you want to come back to. But annotations are a good way to mark what is important, what you might need more clarification on, or connections between the text itself or even other texts. So for the assignment that's due on Wednesday, you should select the article that you'd like to work with for project 1, and then you should essentially do what this student did here. It doesn't have to be this detailed. You don't have to use a million different colors if that's not how you like to work, but you should go through the text and you should underline, highlight, mark important things or things that you are unclear of, okay? And as you continue to watch this video and you learn more of the terms that you'll need to use for project 1, you can even use those in your annotation. If you see an example of pathos, you might just mark pathos. So this is what you should do for Wednesday, okay? And there's more information about how to do this on the actual assignment prompt, okay? So now kind of doing a complete 180 after we've talked about what annotation is, I want to talk about more of the things that you will need for project 1. So we already talked last week about the rhetorical situation. You can look at, I believe it's video 1.2 for a refresher on that, which is essentially just the context surrounding the creation of an article or a movie, whatever it is that you're analyzing, okay? 4 more things that we are going to look at. The writer's purpose. So again, this is embedded in the rhetorical situation, but you should be able to extrapolate what you think the purpose might be. So very infrequently are you going to encounter pieces where the author says, my goal is to convince you of this. But if you read a piece about, say, Black Lives Matter right now, you can probably ascertain that that is being written in direct response to events that are happening, correct? You don't need the writer to tell you exactly why he's writing it. You already know the context, okay? So that you're going to have to extrapolate a little bit. Why is this being written? Why is this being written right now? Why is this relevant now, okay? The types of claims used, we'll talk about that in more detail over the next few slides. Who the audience is, and then the types of evidence and arguments used. So the types of arguments will be available for you on the handout that I mentioned earlier on Canvas. So please look over that because that details very nicely the different kinds of arguments, okay? But let's get into these a little bit further. So claims. So claims are assertions that authors must justify and support with evidence and good reasons. So you're all probably familiar with the term thesis or thesis statement. This is the main claim or the main point or idea of the article. So the thesis should be stated early on, and then the author will back up that thesis with supporting points throughout the essay or the article or whatever it is that you're reading, okay? So how do authors make these claims? Let me move me up here. Here are 3 terms that were created by Aristotle. You might be familiar with them, which is awesome if so. But these are the 3 main rhetorical appeals. So we have ethos, pathos, and logos. So ethos is an appeal to ethics. It is based off the credibility of the author. So in this example, as a doctor, I'm qualified to tell you that this course of treatment will likely generate the best results. So if you hear that statement or see that statement, you are more inclined, or likely more inclined, to believe what is being said because of the words as a doctor. If that said, as a elementary school math teacher, or as a carpenter, I don't know that you would have the same appeal to credibility as you would if you said as a doctor, right? That person is trained in giving you or providing for you the best course of treatment. Now, if you said, as a doctor, I'm qualified to tell you that this is the best flooring you should install in your house. Again, that maybe is not as credible as if you said, as a carpenter, I can suggest that you install this type of flooring in your house. Okay. The second one is pathos, which is an appeal to emotion. So this creates an emotional response in the reader. So if we don't move soon, we're all going to die. Can you see how dangerous it would be to stay? So pathos is usually fairly easy to identify because it evokes an emotional response when you're reading it. Even if you necessarily don't agree with the statement, you can usually identify with the emotional appeal or response that the author is using. Finally, we have logos, which is an appeal to logic. So this relies on reason and facts. So the logarithms have been run in 1,000 different ways, and the math continues to check out. So one way to identify logos is if you have numbers or statistics, data, things like that. However, it doesn't just have to be numbers and like mathematical equations. It can also just be something that's logical. Because of this happened, right? That can be an appeal to logic as well. So you should look for numbers and data and things like that in your articles, but it's not the only way to appeal to logos, okay? So here is, I just like this, if you, depending on how you learn, this might be, or these little, I don't know, icons might stick in your head as ways to remember these 3 different kinds of rhetorical appeals. And you will need to identify these 3 in the article that you select, okay? So when you're selecting your article, you should look and you should see, okay, can I identify ethos, pathos, logos? And you should make sure that you feel comfortable doing that in whatever article you select. All right, so I wanted to give some examples. It won't be quite as fun because we can't discuss them, but here's an example. I'm sure we've seen all of these types of advertisements before, but this says, would you care more if I was a panda, right? So advertisements are a great way to look at different types of rhetoric and rhetorical appeals, because really we see this and they don't have to say very many words, right? We have like, what, 8 to 10 words, and we already know the message that this advertisement is trying to get across, right? So this is an appeal to pathos, right? Because it's evoking emotion. It's like, oh, wow, maybe I would care more if it was a panda. So maybe I should give that same level of care that I do to a panda to the ocean or whatever these shark type looking things are. Right? So you see this also in a lot of advertisements from like PETA, who they use things like pigs or cows, and then they put them next to dogs and cats, and they say like, well, would you eat your best friend? And they're equating the dogs and cats with the cows and pigs, right? So you see that same kind of like emotional appeal being done in those advertisements. Here is a little like infographic. This is something that I've identified as an appeal to logos, right? We can see the way that data is being used to get a point across. So really without saying much, we see distribution of sleep phases over 24 hours, okay? So here orange is REM sleep, the purple is non-REM sleep, and the white is wakefulness, okay? All right, this makes sense just by looking at it, right? This is the difference between someone with a normal sleep cycle and someone who is narcoleptic, okay? This is an example of an appeal to ethos. This is done a lot with like celebrity endorsements. You see, of course, I can't think of examples, but you see, again, Nike's doing it here, right, by appealing to Serena Williams. But Nike does this a lot with, the most popular basketball player of the time, football player of the time, whatever it is. And they say, well, if it's good enough for this person, it's definitely good enough for you, right? Or, I don't know. I think Jennifer Aniston, that's like maybe a dated reference, but Jennifer Aniston has an advertisement with Smart Water, and it's like, wow, look at Jennifer Aniston drinking that water. Maybe I should drink that water too, because she has a certain level of credibility, right? If she says, oh, this makes my skin so, I don't know, rejuvenated and clean and clear, what will it do for you, right? So this is a great example of an appeal to credibility. We see this and we immediately associate Nike with whoever they are using, in this case, Serena Williams, okay? So here are some different types of claims, okay? So the first one here is claims of fact. Claims of fact are assertions that seek to define something or establish a problem or condition that does exist, exists, or will exist. So this does not mean that all claims of facts are true. They're merely presenting the data as factual. So an example, right, it's 27 degrees today in Michigan. This is a claim of fact, but it's not true. But it's being presented in a way, or it's being presented as a claim of fact. So in this way, if you look at this, you can see that this that claims of fact might often be associated with logos, right? An appeal to logic. Also pathos as well, right? You might have an emotional appeal. You're presenting something as factual, even if it's not, but we should look at pigs the same way we look at dogs, right? I'm not saying that's true or false, but that's being presented as a claim of fact, and it might also be attempting to use pathos to convince you of their point. We also have a claim of value. So this is evaluating a problem or a condition that existed, or will exist. So this is presenting a judgment, okay? So usually claims of value are obvious by strong, value-laden words that indicate the author's tone and attitude. So claims of value are probably going to be in a lot of the articles that you are reading, just based off of what I selected, but you will see these in a lot of political articles, a lot of articles about things like climate change, things that are like really important and timely, where the author is saying, this is bad or this is good, and then maybe here's what we should do about it, right? But a claim of value is just where they are saying, this is good or this is bad. They are expressing or evaluating the problem or the situation or whatever it is. And then a claim of policy is an argument for what should happen or what we should do with this. So as I just said, the claim of value might say, climate change is bad. That's a claim of value. Here's what we should then do about it. That would be a claim of policy, right? So that is a call for change. So sometimes those might go together. I think fairly often in the articles that, again, that you are selecting, they will go together. You'll see an author express their opinion or their belief about something, and then they'll say, okay, well, here's what we can do about it. Okay, then not all of your articles are going to do that. They're not all maybe advocating for something, but you will definitely see this. So then looking at the audience, transitioning away from claims, the audience, just like the writer's purpose, will probably not be identified directly in the piece that you're reading. So very infrequently is the author going to say, I am writing this piece for 25-year-old graduate students at, I don't know, Harvard University, right? That's not going to happen very often. However, you can use a writer's language to help us identify his or her audience. So here I've kind of left these three questions to think about as like, how can you identify the audience? So one way is that you can do this based off of the language that the author uses. So does he use medical language? Does he use text speak? Does she write in a mix of two languages? These are all things that you can think about when determining who the audience is. So one thing I like to tell my students is, if you are going to send a text message to your mom versus your best friend, or even versus your grandmother, you probably have very different ways of speaking to all three of those people via text, right? So without even really knowing much more of the context, just by looking at the ways, we could probably take three of your texts that you've written to each of those people, and we could probably figure out, okay, this is for the mom, this is for the grandma, this is for the best friend, right? Another way that you can identify the audience is by looking at the place that something is published. So I think we talked about this last week very briefly, but if something is published on Teen Vogue versus being published on or in PubMed, a medical journal, or something is published on BuzzFeed or The Atlantic, things like that. They have different intended audiences. And very often we know what those audiences are, even if it's never explicitly stated, right? The Atlantic might not say, this is for people who are interested in this. But based off of what is published there, the views that the authors tend to express, we can say, okay, this is most likely written for this demographic. Okay, so in your rhetorical analysis, you will have to determine who you think the audience is. And there isn't always a right or wrong necessarily. Obviously, you need to back it up with evidence, but the audience is up to your interpretation. When you're reading it and you are looking at it and you're like, okay, I think this is written for this group of people. You want to look at examples from the text that are that provide support for your claim. Okay, cool. That's all I have on that PowerPoint. So I hope that this explains some more of the concepts that you will need to be able to do for project 1. Again, watch the next video maybe in a few days. I think it's probably in your best interest if you don't try to watch them all at once and overwhelm yourself with all the different terms and things like that. But after you've watched this video, go through and start your readings for the week, start your annotation, definitely select which article you would like to use for project 1. And then hopefully after you annotate it, you will have a better idea of some of the things that we've discussed here. And hopefully you'll be able to say, okay, I see how this author is appealing to emotion, or I see how this author is using a claim of policy to convince their audience to do this. I hope that this was helpful in thinking about those things. And I look forward to reading your journals and reading responses this week. And I will see you all later. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay cold. It's so hot outside. Bye.